Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Kuf Zayin as we learn Frachenu Chol Beis Yisrael and Surim Batzar V'Shivya, going through a difficult time. Says the Gemara at the two dots in the fifth line. Tfu lo yizranik. The Mishnah said that if you leased a field in order to plant grain, you shouldn't plant it with legumes because that weakens the ground. Masal Rav Yehuda Rabban. So Rav Yehuda taught Rabin a brisa. Tfu yizranikitness. You learn just the opposite of our Mishnah. There's different gears in our Mishnah, but the way we have it is that but you should not plant legumes because that weakens the ground. Whereas here he taught him that if you leased it to plant grain, you could plant kitnius. Our Mishnah says the opposite. It's not a kasha, says Rav Yehuda to Rabin. The Mishnah was written in Eretz Yisrael. Basically, it's written in Hebrew. And in Eretz Yisrael, there the land is weak because it's a dry, mountainous terrain. Therefore, if you lease it to rent grain, you shouldn't plant legumes that weakens the ground. But for us, Halon here in Bavel, where the land is rich with water, very fertile, there's no problem because it doesn't weaken the ground. The ground is very fertile, and if you planted it for grain, you could plant legumes instead. But in Eretz Yisrael, you may not. Rav Yehuda again said to Rabin, Bar Rav Nachman. In our Girsa, the first one, we didn't have Bar Rav Nachman. Here it is, Bar Rav Nachman. Rabbi, my brother, Hani Tichli de Bekis. Sometimes in a flax bed, you find that there's cress planted around it, which is it's short. It says, if you uproot somebody else's, you go into somebody else's flax bed and you uproot the cress that's grown around the flax, that's not stealing. You know why? Because you're doing them a favor. Because it hampers the flax from growing, and it's not worth whatever the cress is worth. It's not worth as much as the damage that it does to the flax bed. So if you come across a flax bed of somebody and you remove the cress that's growing around it, it's not stealing. You're doing the guy a favor. But once if it's on the border, then there is no there is gezel. That's considered stealing because what's on the border, it's not really doing them a favor anymore. Because there it's not causing any harm. If it's in a regular thick bed, then it's causing harm. But on the border, it's on the border of somebody else's property that it's not really causing harm, and then you shouldn't steal the cress. The cress maybe is good for that. Even in a regular rich bed in the middle of the field, if it's already hardened, if the cress has hardened, then afilu de bekisna nami yesh from shum gezel. Then you shouldn't steal it even from the middle of the flat of the bed of the flax bed, because once it's fully grown, it's ripe, meaning the seeds inside have hardened. It doesn't do any more. Whatever damage it's done to the flax has already been done. So it's not going to do any further damage. The only time is if it's starting to grow, if the cress is starting to grow, then it can damage the flax bed. And then you're doing the owner a favor by removing it, by uprooting it. But if it's on the border or it's fully grown, it's not doing any damage, or the damage that it's being done, that it does is already done. And my time, the Gemara says, the opposite. Whatever damage it caused, whatever loss it caused to the flax bed has already been done. Another thing that he said to Rav Yehuda said to Rabin bar Nachman, Rabbi, my brother, Hani dili dilach. My trees are yours. The fruits of my tree are yours. The dilach dili, and the fruit of your tree are mine. What do we mean? It means as follows: the nog b'nei metzra, the people who have trees on borders. I have a tree on my border. You have a tree on your border. B'nei metzra Elon nota lakan. Rashi explains if it's roots. If the tree is in my property, but the roots extending to your property, then the fruits are yours. That's what it means. It depends not where the tree is above ground, it depends where the roots are. The tree is standing on a border. Rav says depends on where the roots are. Shmuel says you split it. You don't say you go where the roots are, you just split all the fruits. You split the produce. Meisvei. If a kasha now in Rav, here we have a brisa which says like Shmuel, that you split it. Tifta Rav said a kashan Rav. Targum Shmuel, leave it Rav. So Shmuel explained Rav's reasoning. B'mamali kol ha'meitzer kulo. Rashi learns that the border is totally full. In other words, the roots take up the whole border, meaning, and he says, Rashi says, the roots go in both directions. If they go in both directions, then you split it. Tosfos learns not that the roots go in both directions, but the roots stay on the border. They stay on the border, then you split it, if it's right on the border. But if they go in one direction, then everybody agrees, or at least Rav would say that they go according to the roots, whereas Shmuel apparently takes a simple saying that it makes no difference, you always split it. If they all stay on the border, or if they're in both directions, obviously you split it, there would be no argument out there. So let's read it. The fruits, above ground, all the fruits are leaning on one side of the border. So what's the chiddush in that? What's the difference of where if the fruits are all leaning on one side, but if the roots are on the border and not leaning to more, let's say according to Rashi, they're both directions. According to Tosfos, they're not leaning towards one more than the other. You should go with the roots. I might say you might think maybe the owner who has the fruits on his side, the actual fruits above ground or leaning on his side, would say, okay, let's split it according to our border. Let's split it according to the border. The fruits are on my side. Why split along the border? Split it this way. Instead of splitting on, this is our border, that's your land, this is my land. Don't split it this way, split it this way, right? Split it in the other direction, so you get half and I get half. Another thing Rav told Rav Achi. Lo tizvan ara dismicha lamasa. Do not buy land which is near the city. Amar Huna, Amar Vasi, in others, don't buy fields near the city, because Rav Abua said name Rav Huna, said name of Rav Oslam Shiamad al Sada Chaber B'Shalmenes B'Kimaseh. You're not allowed to stand next to somebody's field when it's fully grown. You know why? Because you're going to give it an ayin hara. You're going to give it an evil eye. So he said, don't buy land near the city because people are going to see your land and they will give it the evil eye. You say, is there such a thing as evil eye? Apparently there is. Rashi says, we're going to talk more about it in the days. There is an ayin hara. How effective is it? It's not exactly a science where you can determine it, but there are many cases, anecdotal cases of ayin hara, and as we'll see in other days, where the Amoraim said that there was ayin hara. So here Rav's a Tana, and he said, you're not allowed to stand near somebody's field because you might give it the evil eye. So therefore you shouldn't buy land near the city because they will give it the eye. Did Rav really say that? Says more Aini, Vashken Rav Abba, the Talmid of Rav. Rav Abba came across, met the students of Rav. Amalu, Maya Rav Hanikrai. How did Rav interpret these psukim in Kisavo? Baruch atah ba'ir, Baruch atah ba'asodeh, Baruch atah b'voecha, Baruch atah b'tzeisecha. How does he interpret those words? Amulei, and the students of Rav answered Rav Abba. Hachyam Rav, this is what Rav explained. Baruch atah ba'ir, blessed are you in the city. Blessed are you in the city, meaning what's your blessing? That your house should be near a shul. That's a blessing. Baruch atah b'sada, blessed are you in the field. Shein echasecha krovim le'ir, that your assets, meaning your field, should be near the city. So this is our problem. On the one hand, Rav said that you don't want your assets to be near the city. Why? Because people will give it the evil eye and give it ayin hara. And here he says that the blessing is that your assets, your fields, should be near the city. This is our problem. This is the kashan Rav. But before we give an answer, the Gemara goes on to explain. Let's finish it up. Baruch atah b'vecha. Blessed are you when you come in. When you come home from a trip, you shouldn't find your wife in a state where she's a possible nida and you cannot be intimate with her. When you come home from the road. That your offspring should be like you. Meaning those who come out of you should be like you. That's what the Talmidim of Rav answered Rav Abba. By the way, the Rashi in Sanhedrin says, doesn't say you shouldn't find your wife a nida. Find your wife a nida. Okay, when you come home from, why isn't that the blessing? You shouldn't find your wife to be a nida when you come home. A suffix nida is worse. Because if she's a nida, so to separate from her. A suffix, Yetzer Hara always is looking for an excuse. Maybe it's not really a nida, maybe because in other words, Yetzer Hara is stronger by a suffix than by a vadai. That's why he says, Shalatimsa Ishtacha suffix nida, but she shouldn't be a suffix nida. If it's bad enough if she's a nida, that's also a blessing that she shouldn't be a nida when you come home. But she shouldn't be a suffix nida. That's even a bigger blessing because a suffix nida could be worse because you could be tempted. So Rav Yochanan answered these times. I'm sorry, Rav Abba answered him. Rav Abba asked Rav, asked the students of Rav, how does Rav interpret this pasuk, these psukim, and they answered. Rav Abba answered, Rav Yochanan lo Rav Yochanan did not interpret these psukim the way you just described it, Rav. You know what should be? You know what the blessing is? Not that your shul should be near your house, but rather that you should have a toilet near your meal. In other words, it's healthy to use the bathroom when necessary and not hold it in. That can lead to all kinds of diseases, etc., especially after you finished eating or before you're about to eat. Avol basic Knesset he says it's not a blessing to have the shul near you. Rabbi Yochanan quotes according to his reasoning, the Amar schar psias yesh. There's schar for walking further, right? If you have 3 shuls, remember the 3 shuls in your neighbor, you go to the farthest one, you get schar halicha, you get more schar. If you just if the shul is right near your house, not as much schar. So Rabbi Yochanan says that there's not a blessing that the shul should be near your house. The blessing is you should have a toilet near your house. Even worse. You have more steps, right. Baruch atah basara, blessed you in the field she'et nechasechem shuloshin. The blessing in your field is not that your field should be near your house, but that your field, the crops of your field should be evenly distributed in 3 ways. Mishuloshin, shlish b'tfuah, a third in grain, shlish b'seisen, third in olives, shlish b'kfanim, and third in vines. Rashi explains because sometimes the grain is blighted one season, and the grapes and the olives are okay, or vice versa. So it's better not, so to speak, not to have all your eggs in one basket, right? So they say, don't have all the same type of crop. Pardon? Diversity, yeah, diversify, right? As they say, invest with us, right? Diversify your holdings. So when we lose your money, maybe you'll have some left over, right? Baruch atah b'boecha. Blessed are you when you come home, when you come in. What does that mean? The blessing is that when you leave the world, it's like when you came in. Just when you came into the world, when you were born, below chet was without sin, obviously. When you leave the world, you should also be without a chet. That's the blessing that Rabbi Yochanan interpreted the pasuk. Back to our kasha and Rav. On the one hand, Rav said it's not good to have people near your fields because you shouldn't buy a field near a city. Right? Rav's advice, or the Rav Yehuda said to Rav that don't buy land near the city because of the ayin hara that Rav spoke about. On the other hand, Rav said that it's a blessing for your field to be near your house. Your field should be near your house, right? And the blessing from, I think, Brachas Memvavar and Zayin that people are now used to saying when they're guests in somebody's house, the Hiratza, they added that. That's the most important. They turned that into the most important part of the benching out loud. The Hiratza, the blessing for the host. That, and it says in the Chassim, should be near the city, right? Krobim Le'ir. There's low kasha. It's not a kasha Rav. I'm in base now. Shiur. In one place, it's where he has a wall and a hedge partition around it. In other words, when there's no wall and partition around it, then you're subject to ayin hara. People can see it. That ayin hara depends on the eye. I remember my father used to tell me there was a man in his city. He would look at a horse pulling a wagon, and the horse would fall down. That's how bad the ayin hara was. So in one case, if you have a wall and the partition people cannot see or protect it, then there's no ayin hara. But if it's not protected from the eye, then there's an ayin hara. So this discussion of ayin hara leads us into this pasuk. Pasuk says in Akeb, right? Hashem will remove all sickness from you. Amarav zu ayin. This is the evil eye. Zu ayin hara. That's the ayin hara. She says the evil eye. The sickness refers to the ayin hara. Hashem will remove that from you. Rav according to this reason, Rav would attend a cemetery, visit a cemetery Of it, my David, he said some sort of an incantation. He knew how to say something and to understand each person in the cemetery how they died. And he said, Tisha Tishan V'Tisha Bayin Ra. 99 out of 100 people died just from Ayin Hara. It's one of natural means. The other 99 died from Ayin Hara. Maybe there was an exaggeration, but people did die from that. Shmuel Amar Ze'aruach, it's wind. As we'll see, not necessarily cold or hot wind, but the wind, probably the wind bringing, but now we understand it's wind maybe bringing bacteria, etc. But it was the wind that people died from. Shmuel, Tamed Amar Shmuel, Hakol Baruach, everything emanates from the winds, or the air that brings, that carries disease. Shmuel Ha'ika Rugamachos. What do you mean? Shmuel says basically everybody dies of wind. What does that mean? There are people who are killed, let's say, by the government, right? They're killed by the sword. It says Hanach Nami, these people who Ilav Zika, if it wouldn't be for the wind, Abdul Lasama B'chai, they could give them some sort of a potion or a remedy and they could live. Obviously not if they were decapitated, but it's the wind that kills them generally. Rav Chanina Amar Zutzina, it's the cold. When it talks about the sickness, it's the cold. Cold, extreme cold can kill people. Everything is min hashmayim chutz mitzinim pachim, except for the cold and the heat. In other words, that if a person got a disease, he got some sickness that he died from COVID or cancer or whatever, that's min hashmayim. But if he subjected himself to extreme cold or extreme heat, that's his own fault. Shenemar tzinim pachim baderech ikesh. The literal translation is seen him as like armies and things of enemies can come, but the translation here also is that it's cold and heat are on the way of the perverted person. In other words, that if a person is perverse, he will stumble on these things. Man, but a person who guards himself will stay away from these things. And here he explains sinum and sinum pacham as if it's sinum upacham, cold and heat. You know what the sickness that we're talking about when the pasuk says, it refers to all the body excretions. Let's say mucus in the nose, that kind of excretion. It's also osin or wax in the ear, that kind of excretion. Reuben kasher, if there's a lot of it, that's bad for you. Miutam, if it's a small amount, a small amount, it's good to have a little bit of wax in your ear, good to have a little a little nosale, a little liquid in your nose. Rabbi Lezer Amar Zumara. You know what the sickness is referring to? Hashem will remove Mara, all the diseases of the gall of gall, meaning from the gall bladder, meaning the gall that's there. Tanem Yochi Machla Zumara. What do we mean by sickness? It means gall. It sickens the whole body. Machal, in other words, it's called like from Choli, from Lashon Chola, it's called Mara because it really refers to gall. That's some sort of a waste material in the body. But why is it called Machla? Because it sickens the body. The Baracha Machla, why is it called Machla? The Gematria, what's the Gematria of Machla? Mem is 40, Ches is 8, Lamed is 30, that's 78, and 5, Hey is 5, that's 83. Why is it called Machla? Shishmanim b'sholosh shechalam talim b'mara. There are 83 different diseases that are dependent on the gallbladder. But Kulan, all these diseases, pas shachas b'melech, if you have a good breakfast, morning breakfast with bread, with salt, shamayim, and a jug of water, vavat lasan, and as a good breakfast will annul these diseases. Always eat well in the morning. Tan Rabbanan. Yudimot Varm Nemar Pas Shachas. There are 13 things that are said about having a good meal in the morning. Matzelas menachama menatzina. It saves, it protects you. It's a good antidote for the sun, from the sun and the cold. Umenazikin, and from the winds. Umenamazikin, from demons also. Umachimas pesi, and also wisens up the simple-minded. It's good. In other words, it puts you at ease. V'zocha bedin. You'll have good arguments if you have some sort of a court case with somebody else. It makes your mind, puts your mind at ease, so that you can argue your case well and you'll win your case in court. Lilma Torah. It helps you to learn Torah. L'lamed, to teach Torah. Udvar nishman. Because you are pleasant and at ease, people will listen to you. The Talmud of Maskam Yara will be successful with your learning. The Aim Sarah Malahebel, you won't perspire. V'niskak l'ishto, and a person will live with his wife, and and he won't desire other women. In other words, when he's in a good state of mind, he'll be with his wife, and therefore he won't desire other women. and also destroys stomach worms in the stomach. All those are good things that come from having a good breakfast. Some say, it also expels jealousy. Rashi says jealousy and fighting. Rashi's girsa is that it's it expels jealousy and fighting. Rashi says when you don't feel good about yourself, it's easy to get angry. Sometimes you're angry because you're hungry and etc. That's what it means over here too. Some say that it also expels the jealousy of machnas sa'aba and induces love. Amalei Rabba, the Rabba Bar Mari. Rabba said to Rabba Mari, what's the source of the saying that people say, Shisen Ritin Roy, that you could have 60 runners running after somebody, but Lamatu, they won't overtake the Mitzah. They won't overtake the man who broke bread in the morning, meaning that he had good breakfast. Some say, and the rabbis also say, Hashkem Echol V'Kayetz, get up early in the morning and eat in the summer because of the sun, to protect you from the sun weakens you. And you have breakfast in the winter, to protect you from the cold. So where did this come from? This idea that if you have a good breakfast, it'll protect you from people and from the weather elements. Amalei Desiv, they will not be hungry nor thirsty. And the heat and the sun will not smite them. What does that mean? The sharav, the heat, and the shemesh will not smite them. Since they won't be hungry or thirsty. When you're not hungry or thirsty, you will be protected. Amalei, so Rabba said, so Rabba Marmari answered him in this pasuk, and Rabba answered him, as you say, that pasuk. I got it the pasuk. Give me a pasuk in Yishai. I got a pasuk in the Chumash. It says, you will serve your God, and He will bless your bread and your water. What does it mean? What does it mean to serve God? That's saying Kriya Shema and Shemon Esrei in the morning. What does it mean? Bless your bread and your water. That's salt with bread, salty bread or bread with salt on it. And a jug of water. Once you had that, that's what it means. You serve God. You say Shema and Shemon Esrei. Then you daven. Then you after you daven you eat. And if you eat, then afterwards Hashem will remove the sickness from you. These things won't affect you. Amar Rav Yudah Rav Ada Mishacha. Mishacha means limshoch here, or mishoch to measure. He was a surveyor. And as people bought property from one another, he would measure out exactly where the land, each person's lands reach to. Like we have surveyors today to determine, how far latitude, how far longitude, everything is, and exactly where it is. So he says, don't make light of your surveying, of your measurements. Why? The whole port to every small amount of land, even a tiny stretch, is fit for garden saffron, for good stuff. In other words, you can grow stuff there. So don't make light of the measurement. Say, that's close enough. You got to measure it exactly, because if you take away a few inches from somebody, you're taking away fertile land from them that they could grow there. So Rav Yehuda said, and he said so Rav Yehuda first said to Rav Ada, don't make light of it. Be very careful, be exacting in your measurements, because even a small piece of land is fit for growing good stuff. Another thing, he said, and when there's a channel of water, like a water canal that stretches from the local river or pond or lake, whatever, so you're not supposed to plant or plow your field within Dalet Amas of that channel, because otherwise you'll ruin the channel, it'll collapse, etc., and the neighbors need the water. There's Zolzabul, you don't have to be exact. You just have to say approximately, and where, so you don't have to be that careful, as we'll see. Danhara, if it's the 4 Amos on a river that serves the entire public there, you don't have to measure it at all. You just say approximately, because people know. Rav Yehuda who told this to Rav Ada Mashcha, to the surveyor, Rav Yehuda goes according to this. He said, Rav Yehuda Arba Amos Nanigra, the 4 Amos that you have to leave from the water canal from the channel there, that's for the people who live on that canal. So if you're off by a little bit, it doesn't it only hurts those people. They're not makbid so much on every inch. If you're 4 amas, you don't have to measure it exactly. But on the river, the Kuliyama, it's for everybody. So there you could give it like berevach. Nobody's going to be mochel. So he says there you have to don't even measure it exactly. Like make sure you give a liberal amount. That the dalat amas is liberal. That you make sure that it's at least dalat amas. You have to measure it exactly. You can give it a little bit more because nobody's going to be mochel. That's for the whole public. Right. So people could see that there's plenty of room there. Machros Rav Ami called out as follows: Malay Kisve Nagdi. Nagdi are the bargees, the people in the narrow and shallow rivers. There would be the people like the schleppers, the bargees, the people who would pull the barge, the boat up and down the river with ropes. In other words, when they had to pull the rope, they couldn't navigate on its own. They didn't have power motors and things like that. So they would pull the small boats with ropes. So he says you have to leave enough room on the bank for the shoulder width of the schleppers. We'll call them schleppers, the porters who pull the boats, called barges. The barge was pulled by the bargees, I guess, right? So for those bargees, Malay Kisve, the shoulder, the full shoulder breadth of these bargees, the Trev Nahara, on the two sides of the river. Kotsu, you should cut down any shrubs or trees or bushes, whatever grew over there, or any plants, any things that were planted there. You must cut that down to leave room for these bargees. Rav Nassim Marushia cuts shitzer amsa. He cut not the shoulder width of a regular person is what, an amma and a half, not very much. He cut down 16 amas on the river banks of their rivers. Also, Aloy ben Meshrina, the people of that city came on him. Dafnu, they beat him. He made sure that they cut down 16 amas on either side of the river. He saw it's like Rosh Hashanah. You have to leave Rosh Hashanah. It's not Rosh Hashanah. Hasam being a Rosh Hashanah, you have to leave 16 amas because people walk on the road. This is the reason over here where you have to leave room is for the rope pullers, the bargees who have to pull their ropes. It's enough, like the shoulder width of the barges, that's enough. All you need is a shoulder width, whatever it is, maybe 2 amas maximum. Rabbi Barapuna, Rabbi Barapuna had a forest, Aguda Dinahara. He owned a forest on the riverbank. Amalei, they said to him, Naked Smar, why don't you cut down, these small, right, was right on the riverbank. You have to cut down. We just learned you have to cut down a couple of amas on each side, right? So that the bargees can pull the boats. Amalu, let the people above me, upriver and downriver for me, let them cut first. Amalu, let the people upriver and downriver, let them cut it down. In other words, I'm in the middle, right? There are people upriver for me, there's owners, and there's people below me. They haven't cut it down. And the people up me haven't cut it. What's the point of my cutting mine down? There's going to be blocked by the other ones upriver and downriver. Let them do it, then I'll do it. How could he do that? It says, gather yourselves and gather you. What does that mean? Which means first adorn yourself. First do what's right for you. Somebody will say, let him give first, then I'll give. What are you telling them to do first and then you? You're supposed to take care of yourself. That's different over there. That's not like encouraging other people to give stuff or to do some good deed. Over there, the problem was Hassam Abba there, the forest above him was the Beit Parzik Rafila, was owned by this Goyish ruffian, or he was he belonged to Beit Parzik. Hachad Parsim was a Persian, rough man, a Persian tough man who owned it before. Omar, he says, look, he's not going to cut it down. Kaitsina. If he's going to cut down his above me, then I'll cut down mine to below Kaitsi. If he doesn't cut this down on mine, what's the purpose of my cutting down mine if above me he's not cut down? They won't be able to traverse his bank. They won't get to mine. if they're able to pull their ropes, mistakilu, it'll be enough, right? In other words, if they're able to traverse the Parzik Rafila's land, even though he didn't cut it down, they'll be able to go mine too. The elo, and if not, lo mistakilu. They're either going to be able to traverse it or not. If they're not going to be able to, there's no point in my cutting down mine. What are they going to do? If they can't traverse his, they're going to have to go across the river and pull it from that side. And when they get to mine, what are they going to do? Cut down. They're going to cross the river back to go on my territory. They're going to continue on the other side. There's no point in it. Another story at the top line of Kufches. Rabba bar Rav Nachman Havikosel Ba'arba. He was on a boat. He was traveling on a boat. He saw a forest. The Koya Gudanara. They saw a forest right on the riverbank that wasn't cut down. That they didn't cut down. Amaluhu. The man, who did it belong to? Amalei to Rabba bar Rapuna. It belonged to Rabba bar Rapuna. Now, this could be the same forest of Rabba bar Rapuna who didn't cut it down, right? Rabba bar Rapuna, he had a forest and he didn't cut it down. He said, "There's no point. The guy above me is a guy. He's not going to cut it down." But anyway, now Rabba bar Nachman, a different Rabba, was on a river and he saw this forest that belonged to Rabba bar Rapuna. He didn't cut it down. Amar, Yara Sorim Vasagonim Haisa Bamal Hazeh Rishona. The hand of the officers and the rulers was in this iniquity, in this sin first. In other words, look, here you have it belongs to Rabbi Barafuna, a great rabbi like that. And, look how it looks, and it's he's sinning effectively. Amalahu kotsu. So Rabbi Rav Nachman said, "What? It belongs to Rabbi Barafuna? He didn't cut it down." He told him he commanded that his assistants over there should cut down this forest of Rabbi Barafuna to allow the schleppers to pull the boats. Amalu kotsu. So they cut it down. Also, Rabbi Barafuna came. Ashkei the kites. He found that they cut it down. Amar man katsaye takutz anfe. Whoever cut it down, his branches should be cut down, meaning his children should be killed. Amar, they said that Kulu Shani to Rabbi Barafuna, all the years that Rabbi Barafuna was alive, Rabbi Barafuna, whose forest was cut down over here, he was upset, and he said, whoever cut it down should be cut down himself. And all the years of Rabbi Barafuna, the curse took effect, and Rabbi Nachman shouldn't have gotten involved. When they heard that, he made a mistake. He says, the halach is he's supposed to cut it down, but he didn't know the circumstances, and Rabbi Barafuna was a great man, and he shouldn't have said that. About this man, this great rabbi sinned, cut it down. He took the law into his own hands, and because of that, he got cursed by Rabbi Barafuna. And all the years that Rabbi Barafuna was alive, Rav Nachman did not have any children that survived. Amar Yehuda, Hakol Igle Gapa Afilu Miasme. When it comes to fixing the town wall that protects them from invaders and from enemies, people who hate them, everybody has to contribute, even orphans, because everybody's protected by the wall. Aval Rabbanan lo, the rabbis don't have to contribute; they get the clergy discount, right? My time, Rabbanan lo, so they don't need guarding because the Torah guards them, right? Lakare de pasya for the pit diggers, the well diggers, right? The pasya here is the well. Rashi says that it refers to pasya from the word. That refers to the containers for the wells, because so here it's for the well diggers. Then everybody has to contribute. Even the rabbis have to contribute. Why? Because they also need the water. You could say protection. They have divine protection, so they don't have to contribute to the wall. But the water they're drinking, obviously, right? So for well diggers, even the rabbis have to contribute. Not only Yisomim and others, everybody who partakes in the water has to help dig it. That's only if they don't go out in bands and armies. In other words, that's only if the people themselves are not digging it. They paid somebody to do it. But if you can't demand that the rabbis themselves go out and dig, that's improper. Why? You don't have to. They're not. It's dishonorable for them to have to go and dig it themselves. They have to contribute financially to the well diggers, but they don't have to go themselves and do it. All right, so tomorrow's Gemara we'll pick it up from here. Amar Yudah Lakari Denora Desoy, talking again about wells, rivers above and below, and also it's an important Gemara. Tomorrow's Gemara talks more about Dinah de Bar Metzra, the right of first refusal. If you buy a land that abuts yours and you want to sell it, you have to give me right of first refusal to buy it before you sell it to others. That's on Daf Kufches, tomorrow's Daf. We'll pick it up and it'll be on the podcast. And on Sunday, Mitzvah, we'll pick it up from the top of Kufches. Shabbat Shalom Lekulam. Have a good day. So